I'm Stan Zontek, Mid-Atlantic Director of the United States Golf Association Green Section. As you can see, I'm sitting here in $1 million of turf equipment as we prepare for the U.S. Open Championship. This golf course is peaked to challenge the best golfers in the world. Ask yourself the question, would this be a fun golf course to play every day with fast greens, challenging sand in the bunkers, deep rough? I'd say it may be fun to play once or twice, but would you want to play that every day? Enjoy the U.S. Open and be glad you don't have to play these tough conditions every day.
When you think about all that he has contributed to the game of golf, whether it's something like being involved with the U.S. Open golf course setup, being involved with best practices and consulting with golf courses, around the country, or being involved in some very technical matter or research and development matter, it's hard to think about those things and not think about Stan Zontek.
The USGA, the Turf Advisory Service, was one thing, and it certainly does have credibility with the golfers when it comes to owners or green chairmen or golfers themselves. But in my opinion, Stan brought more than that, because he was a third party and he would come into a situation or a concern, and when he would say something, people would listen.
It was always an adventure to spend your week traveling with Stanley. I remember mine very clearly. I'd only been on staff about 8 months when I went out on my adventure with Stanley. During that week, we talked about a lot of topics: agronomic, turf industry, but we also hit a lot of his favorite topics: cooking, American history, automobiles. We talked about it all. And he really has proved to be a great mentor for many of the people on the Green Section staff, myself included.
I always enjoyed his generosity of spirit. There was no one I don't think he wouldn't help. He loved the industry, loved the people in the green industry, both the golf course superintendent, the assistant, the people that manage golf courses. In academia, he always interacted well with the professors and the graduate students. You hear the expression larger than life, and I think that will stand.
I don't think I could get to where I am, where I sit behind the desk out on the golf course as a golf course superintendent without Stan's help. I owe a tremendous amount to the success thus far in my career to Stanley.
Stan had a tremendous impact on my career and on my life, to be quite honest about it. Stan was the kind of guy that liked to mentor people, and he certainly was my postgraduate mentor.
What did Stan give to the game of golf? Many things: camaraderie, honesty, integrity. But I think Stan's going to be remembered more than anything for the way he mentored the new breed, if you like, of US agronomists and professors. Nothing delighted him more than to bring them to the home of golf, introduce them to some of his drinking buddies and golfing buddies, and through that obviously we've all made far-reaching and hopefully long-lasting friendships.
Golf was his life. That's what he tried to do, and it didn't matter whether you were a general manager, a course official, or a superintendent. Stan tried to educate you. Stan always tried to make you feel welcome and a part of the team.
Stan's impact on me was just monumental. He was my agronomist in the spring and fall, my psychologist in the summer.
Stanley had a big influence on my opportunities in the industry, and I think that he was kind of pulling me along so that I would succeed and he could be there to help.
He was relevant to every single generation. I mean, he would sit in there and talk to the students about, the trials and tribulations of the business. And there's a guy that was in his 60s talking to people that were in their 20s, and they were 100% captivated by everything that he had to say.
Those of you that know who Baby is, that's his Shelby vehicle, and I mean, he loved that automobile almost as well as turf. And he took me for a ride on a visit up to State College one time in Baby. It was a good thing I didn't have a lot to eat before we went, because he liked to show that car off, let me tell you. And scared the bejesus out of me a couple of times.
Ironically, we both owned Cobras at the same time, and we would expound upon whose Cobra was the fastest, and just like typical old men, you know, all we did was just rhetoric. We never really lined it up and found out.
Well, he loved to talk about tires. He's one of the only human beings left I know that changed to studded snow tires every winter on his car, even on his Camry, which is kind of funny.
Stanley just loved St. Andrews for a lot of reasons, but one of them certainly was the people, and just every one of them was a golfer. And so it was one of these afternoons at the Russell Hotel. We were kind of waiting around for dinner, and there was this gentleman sitting next to us, and Stanley, of course, introduces himself, and they start this conversation. And finally, again, Stanley gets around and says, well, I'm agronomist with the USGA. And this fellow lights up. He says, well, do you know Stan Zontek? And Stanley gets this very pleased grin on his face, and with just the proper, best possible timing, he just smiles and says, I am Stan Zontek.
Stan had a great sense of humor. It was fun to be around. He always had stories to share. It was an enjoyable event every time he was there. He had an ability to laugh at himself and to see the humor in life, and he was a person, I think, who really enjoyed life and was very comfortable in his own skin.
One of the things we had in common throughout the years was Stanley's love of entertaining, and we loved to party and entertain. And
Dan Pearson was famous for his Memorial Day get-togethers based around the Indianapolis 500. At the time I was dating my wife, and she had played volleyball at the University of Delaware, and a lot of her girlfriends were in that weekend.
And our house was a common ground to hold those events, and so we'd, at any excuse, we'd have a party.
And will never ever forget the look on Stanley's face when these 6 volleyball girls came walking in to Dan's house, and he literally was sitting there with his apron on, looking up at these girls, and just mouth dropped open.
And Stanley would always cook.
They walked outside, get ready to play for a volleyball game. Off comes the apron, there goes Stanley out playing volleyball, and it was one of the most hilarious afternoons I've ever spent with a guy.
But I really wanted him to write a book about all those little out-of-the-way restaurants and pubs that only he knew about. He knew every little place to get the perfect crab cake or the perfect mushroom soup. I'll miss that.
A lot of Sundays, if he had Sundays free, he'd come over and we'd watch NASCAR, or we'd watch a football game or whatever, and he'd cook. I always say cooking and cleaning. That's all I'm ever asked to do, is cook and clean. And after the meal was over, we'd retire to the living room, and he'd light up that cigar, and we'd enjoy somebody else doing the cleaning.
Being from Iowa, he found out that I had never had a crab cake, and he made that his mission to make sure that I tasted the best crab cakes ever. And I will say, probably that one that I ate with him was probably still the best one I've ever had in my life.
Didn't matter where we went, Stanley always knew where to go for the best meal, the meal of the area, if you will. Fish and chips overseas, ribs down in Cincinnati. I wish he would have had a chance to write the book he kept telling everybody he was going to do.
There were a good many Fridays throughout every month. It didn't matter if it was a golf season or out of season that we spent together. A lot of times it wouldn't just be at the golf course on a Friday. We'd head up to the Italian market here in Philadelphia, which was always great because he just knew everyone there at the Italian market. You almost thought he was connected.
I used to kid him, call him Zagat's, because you could go to any city in the United States and Stan Zontek could give you the top 3 restaurants in that area.
Stanley was known for a lot of his sayings that he gave to all of us, but probably the one that I remember most over the years was that he always said that this was a people business.
One of Stan's favorite things that Stan says is, "This is not for publication." That one sticks out in my mind. And at the end of his presentations, the USGA Year in Review, which were always great, at the very last slide, it would always say, "Go golf." And I remember Stan would always tell his golf course superintendents, just grow grass. At the end of the day, just grow grass.
Wow. You know, one of his famous sayings was, you know, grass talks to you. And he would look at our greens when they were absolutely brown. And he says, I believe that this grass has finished talking. And I said, I don't think so, buddy. Just mute.
The members are actually using this one stanism. And he says that greenkeeping is more of an art than a science, and it really is.
Well, trees are bad for grass. I mean, that's this, you know, his legacy. One of the things that I, you know, said when I learned of his passing is that, you know, the grass has lost a very good friend and the trees not so much.
Certainly, my favorite of all Stanleyism is layers are nice in cakes, but not greens.
Stan's passing indeed was one of the saddest days that the USJ family's ever had. You know, Stan's contributions, not only to the USJ, but to the game of golf were immense, and he will not soon be forgotten. He was a dear friend of so many of us, and we'll miss him greatly.
If Stan was standing here right now, I'd just say, you know I'd say thank you. Always thank him for the times we'd come by, and he'll be sorely missed. So I do miss him. He was a great friend.
It's not so much the longevity of life as it is the quality of life that's important. Stan was very good at what he did, and in addition he was also a genuinely very good person. And so for those two reasons he'll be sorely missed.
He's too young a man to have to leave us, so we'll all miss him.
I'd like to tell him I'm going to miss him. Life's not going to be the same for any of us.
He was my agronomist, but more importantly, he was really one of my best friends. So, I mean, he'll be sorely missed.
I went to Dunkin' Donuts and I got a cup of coffee. That was Stanley's favorite, but whenever I stopped to get the cup of coffee, it was tough. It was really tough.
It's the hardest thing about dealing with not having Stan anymore. It's exactly that, not having Stan anymore. It's going to be hard to realize, just like with any close friend that goes in passing, that they're not there anymore.
Well, the biggest thing I would say is thanks. I owe my USGA career in a lot of respects to Stan, and it's been a good career and a good organization to work with. And he was my friend. He wasn't just my boss. And to that I say thanks, because I got to experience a lot of great things, and a lot of the stuff that I have and my family has, I directly owe to Stanley.
Only one last thing to say. Here's to you, Stan.